I used to think that a good edit had a lot of layers, a lot of effects, and even more transitions. But after 15 years of being a filmmaker and editing hundreds, if not thousands of videos, I realized that great storytelling doesn't come from complicated edits. It comes from simple, intentional cuts that actually make the story feel like a story. So today I will walk you through the only 7 cuts you really need with editing, because these are cuts that I keep coming back to no matter what kind of video I'm making. So let's start with one of my favorites, the flow cut. This is when your shots feel like they're dancing together. It's smooth and invisible. So here's the basic idea. When something moves in your frame, like a person or an object, or it could even be the camera itself, your viewer's eyes start to follow that motion. And if your next shot picks up that movement in the same direction, their eyes just keep going effortlessly. For example, this marker being dragged up, followed by a new shot that continues the upward motion from the camera. You can notice here, my hand goes up in the first shot, and in the next, that upward motion continues with the camera movement. So your eyes are guided upward. If instead the first motion goes up and the next shot starts going the opposite corner or going sideways, that's friction and the viewer will feel the cut. So start thinking of editing a bit more like choreography. If you guide the eyes naturally, the viewer won't notice the cut and they will just stay inside of the story. That's what you want. So the next time you edit, look for flow in the motion. Is your subject moving? Is your camera moving? And can you connect those directions from one shot to the next? Where the flow cut is really about smooth transitions, this one is about disruption actually. And that's really why it works so well. Because a smash cut is when you intentionally break the rhythm. So it's a sudden cut from one scene to a completely different one. And it often works best when music or the sound cuts out too. Because that really grabs attention and it creates contrast and it tells the viewer, hey, pay attention because something just changed.
What started out as random fun projects with a friend turned into a full-blown creative video agency. Small jobs became bigger ones. But as things got bigger, I guess something changed.
Okay. So what makes this cut really powerful is the emotional reset it adds. And this can add humor or tension or simply just keep the viewer from falling into a predictable rhythm. So yeah, really try to use this when you want to create energy or surprise or highlight a turning point and really get the viewer's attention. Just don't overdo it because, surprise only works if it's, well, surprising. And by the way, if you ever get stuck on figuring out what to shoot or how to shape your story before editing, I made something that might help and it's called the Story Starter Kit. So if that sounds interesting, you can find more info in the description. But now let's talk about the jump cut. The jump cut gets a bad reputation because it's used like this in talking head videos. But it's actually one of the most practical cuts there is. Because you're staying in the same shot, but you skip forward in time. Like here, where I'm sitting down to work and I'm being frustrated for not getting anything done. Same frame, different moments, quick jumps. This is also one of those cuts that I really like to land on exactly the beat, because that just feels good sometimes.
But I reminded myself why.
So it's a great way to show progress, repetition, or speed something up. And you can use it to make a scene fast or chaotic, or also for fun. And that energy is exactly what keeps it interesting, I think. So the action cut is all about editing in the middle of movement. So when you cut during an action, like sitting down for example, the motion continues across the cut. It feels smooth and it feels natural because your viewer's brain is already following the movement, just like in a flow cut. Here I'm sitting down and right at the moment of sitting, I cut to the close shot in the action. And it doesn't have to be fast or dramatic. Even a slow, calm action can really go fluid if you cut it right in the middle of it. The key here is again to guide the viewer's eyes. If their attention stays on the same spot in the frame, the cut becomes almost invisible. Like here, this balloon is floating slowly and then I cut to a close-up. But because the dream sticker stays in the exact same place on the screen, your eyes don't have to move, so the cut feels right. And sometimes, just a few frames earlier or later can really make the difference. So really pay attention to that. But yeah, that's the magic of the action cut and it can really make everything feel alive. So try this in your next edit because it might only take a few frames to make your story click a lot better. So yeah, this is actually not a single cut. It's more like a sequence of cuts that work together, so you can guide the viewer through a moment. And it's super basic, but basic doesn't mean to have boring, and I use it all of the time. I'm talking about the wide, medium, close pattern. So you start with a wide shot to show us where we are, then a medium to show what's happening, and then a close-up to show details or show emotion. So from wide to medium to close. And this gives your story structure and it gives your audience clarity. And it just works because clarity is really important. And I still use this combination all of the time. And once you've used this enough, you will start to feel when to change it up. You know, maybe you will skip the medium entirely for a more of emotional kind of hit, going from wide to close immediately. Or you flip it around and you start close to only reveal the full picture in the end to surprise the viewer that someone is actually in a desert, for example.
I didn't even recognize where I was anymore.
But before you break that pattern, maybe start working with it first, because it's really one of the most easiest ways to bring some clarity into your edit. And that clarity is really important for your viewers. So this is one of the most satisfying cuts when you pull it off right. It's called a match cut and it connects two shots using something visually similar. So that could be a shape or a subject in the same position within the frame. And it's kind of a way to say that these two things belong together. So it can link moments in time or places, or you can use it to create metaphors. I really use this when I want to show a connection between things, like a past version of me turning into the present one, or to have a smooth transition between two completely different scenes.
That I wanted to be a YouTuber, just like half of the world today.
And if you're matching people, there's one trick that's really important to remember, and that's that you try to match the eye position across the cut. Because when the eyes stay in the same place on the screen, the transition will feel way more natural. So try using a match cut next time to intentionally connect two things that mean something together. You know, sometimes the most important part of a cut is when it actually happens. Editing is rhythm. And if your video moves at the same pace the whole time, your audience will sure start to tune out. So paying attention to the speed of your cuts is how you keep them engaged, by shifting the tempo. The faster cuts here are building tension, and the slower cuts are there to let something land emotionally. It's all about contrast, just like music. It needs climax and it needs a release. And I use this when I want to change the energy of a scene or guide the viewer into how I want them to feel, exciting or calm or emotional or chaotic. And if your video feels too flat or too chaotic, try playing with the speed of your cuts. It's really one of the easiest ways to shape emotion. And you know, the truth is, editing is always a bit of a puzzle, and there's always a point where it feels like it's not going to work. But I want you to know that that's really normal, because if you're hitting a wall, it probably means that you're close to something special or something meaningful. And if you do want some help from start to finish, if you're unsure what to shoot or how to shape a story that actually flows, that's exactly why I created the Story Starter Kit. It gives you a simple, repeatable storytelling method. You will write your story with clear templates, plan your shots with a visual guide, and then move into the edit with confidence using my pre-built editing templates and a step-by-step video walkthrough. And I also just upgraded the kit with the 7 cuts guide. It's a 7-page guide with a summary and extra information about the 7 cuts in this video. So the link is in the description if that sounds helpful. And one last tip before we wrap up. You don't need to cram all these 7 cuts into one video. Just ask yourself, what does this moment need? Does it need a smooth flow, a surprise, or a shift in rhythm maybe? And just pick the cut that serves that moment best. From there you can always build further. Now, if you want to learn how to shape that story from the very beginning, check out this video next, where I'll walk you through the 5-line story method that I use to write every script.